All right, so I will get a sharing screen and launch us in. And so we have at least one cat out there. I'm gonna, just because this is my newly adopted rescue pup from down in Texas, Duke. So if at any point you're here whining or chewing, that's not me specifically, but it could be me also. So just know that that's a thing. And Amy and Laura, since you're co-hosts, if you can keep an eye on the room, there's still a few people filtering in and kind of leaving and coming back in. So we want to make sure that no one gets stuck in the waiting room there. That would be awesome. If you do have access, I see we have Araceli coming in here as well right now. All right, so let me share and we'll get underway. At this point in the morning, I've already worked a few hours and I've tried to wrap up things so I could be fully present for this session. So I am also very caffeinated and I can tend to speak a little bit quickly. So if you have a question, as Laura said, being present, being engaged, it's still a little bit of one of our housekeeping slides here. Please stop us as we move along. We do want this to be an active discussion. There's plenty of material to absorb, and you don't have to write down every slide. We will share out a PDF of the slide deck, but there's also a lot of good kind of context and content that's not actually written down. So feel free to take notes, but just know you don't have to copy down anything that you see on a slide. I will share that PDF out to Laura so she can share with the group post session. All right. So just if I can get a thumbs up that you're seeing the Project Management 101 slide. All right, we're good to go there. Excellent. All right, so let's start us moving. Project Management 101, Introduction and Methods for managing your LPV projects. As I said, we will talk a little bit about the discipline of project management. I will not do the deep dive because you can spend weeks and months studying and learning the kind of true depths of all this. But we do want to give a little bit of context around, there is a whole discipline out there. If you're actively engaged and want to kind of run into that path in your life, if you're not there already, learn how to do projects better, learn all the tools and techniques and all the different ways that you can approach project management. There's worlds of detail, and I'll share a couple of links out to Laura after the fact as well. Laura kind of hit on these already, but I do want to reiterate them. Be present. You know, we love talking about this stuff. Your input and feedback and questions are super important to make this an interesting session because it can be dry if we're not all engaged. So keep your cameras on if you can. If there's things going on in the background and it might be distracting, understandable, but try to be camera on so we can see you and kind of get reactions. So one downside of being stuck in a COVID world, you can't always see what's going on. And if people are off camera, it's a little bit harder to see if folks have gone glassy-eyed or fallen asleep on you, and we need to change direction. Mute appropriately. I have a dog myself. You know, I can't help it if I'm talking and he's whining, but if you've got other things going on, you don't have to be on mic the whole time, but have your finger on the trigger. If you've got a question, unmute. We can always step back a notch if it takes a little bit longer. And again, be engaged. You'll enjoy this and take more away through active participation for sure. All right, so before we begin, just a couple of things that are important within the context of LPV, and I slotted these right at the top. So my firm is actually not unique in the world, but we are a for-profit business that actually 100% serves nonprofits. I'm a Salesforce shop, so we do solution design, implementations of Salesforce CRM systems for small, you know, 3-person nonprofits, all the way up to very large nonprofits across the country. So beyond the fact that I, in my career, have worked right alongside nonprofits, I currently have been working for a couple of years within the nonprofit space, but just from the perspective of managing more complex technical projects and kind of directing a team of project managers towards the nonprofit space. Nonprofit folks are often busy. There's surely people in the room who understand this and work for them, and we'll learn a little bit more about you in a second, but being patient with them. Many are tech savvy, many are not, many are super busy, many have a little bit of capacity, but there's often people who are going to be the decision makers that you're going to be working with that do wear a lot of hats. And so understanding that they may not always have the time to respond to you. We'll talk a little bit more about this as a part of one of the hands-on exercises that we break out into here. Accountability, very significant within the LPV space. So I not only went through as a participant in LPV, but also participated as a coach a couple of years later. One of the things that interrupts team flow is the busyness of life. Trying not to be too busy to engage with your team and keep things moving. Really important for the accountability of all. And once people start dropping away, you kind of see a domino effect. So gelling up as a team and staying focused on supporting each other is really important there. Staying on track, it's easy to get sidetracked with life happening around you. So we all know what that dovetails into the accountability statement. And process versus outcome. So in the kind of formal project world, we're often working and driving towards the project deliverable. We're not going to hone in on that today. Yes, there's an outcome that you want to see as you take on project work, and I'm assuming many of you are doing that in your day-to-day. The LPV process is centered around the process, and the project process is very exceptionally important to make sure that the outcome actually ends up where you want it to. So focus on the process, make sure you're taking the time to step through it. It is about forging bonds with your team, but also understanding how the process works and getting better through it. Today, I didn't articulate the agenda down to the minutia here, but a little bit more medium high level. We're going to just go through a round of introductions with the folks in the room. Just want to get to know who we've got here and kind of the types of organizations you're working for. We'll do a quick hands up survey around kind of levels of understanding around project management. We're going to talk about session goals here in just a second. The two kind of main components are the project management 101. That's where I'm going to try my best to put you to sleep, but with some, energy injected in along the way. Amy's going to have the second part, project management in LPV, and that's going to be a little bit more specifically focused on the work that she did when she went through the program and her team's kind of outputs and process. And then Laura, I've got the standard session close reflection. So we'll close the discussion at one point and we'll hand it back to Laura for whatever debrief you'd like to do at the very tail end of this. But we do want to make sure that we kind of have a cap there with any open Q&A that's not addressed through the regular discussion. Does that sound good to everyone? All right, I like nodding heads. I like thumbs up because if you're on mute, it's sometimes hard to tell. All right, so Laura gave a great intro. I'm Dan Montagna. Dan is fine, Director of Project Management, Craftsman Technology Group. I've been working in kind of a more formalized project area, a management area for about 16 years. I've recently gotten my certified Scrum product owner, that's a CSPO, but also PMP certified for about 9 years at this point. I've managed project portfolios anywhere from multiple projects at the same time, anywhere from about 20K or below up to very large, long-term, 2-year plus projects worth a couple of $1 million. All that doesn't mean a whole lot in the context of things because you're still just kind of working through your day-to-day. But that's me in a nutshell. Amy.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy, and I am a digital product manager at CVS. I joined CVS during the pandemic last year, so I've been there for a year now. Prior to CVS, I was working at Mass Mutual. I was a project manager there, and then I also most recently was a digital business consultant. Yeah, I've been doing this for more than 5 years, so I think it's around like 6.5 now. But with my most recent shift to CVS, it's a fully remote job. So they allowed me to move back to New York to be closer to family. So that was really nice. But yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Amy. Okay, so if we can do a quick around the room here, if everyone's got, and just to not have mass chaos of who goes first and who goes next, I'm just looking at the participants list, assuming it's the same order for everyone. If you open up the participants list from Zoom, and we can call anyone out if you don't have the window open. Dan, Laura, and Amy are the top three. You know who we all are at this point. I think April, you're the first next on the list. If you wouldn't mind just walking through this brief intro, 30 seconds to a minute, who you are, company or organization you're working for currently, why you decided to come to the session, and give us an icebreaker here. Even if you don't love scary movies, what's your favorite scary movie?
Hello, everybody. My name is April Hodgen. I work for Springfield Public Schools. I'm in my office now. I came to this session because I do a lot of project management here, and I'm always looking for some subject matter experts to improve my practice. And I don't love scary movies. In fact, I have watched almost none in my life.
Any other movie? What's your favorite movie then?
I have a lot of favorite movies, but the first one that comes to mind is A Few Good Men.
Good choice.
I'm a drama movie watcher.
All right. Great to have you here, April. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask that we go off screen share just so we can see everybody's faces just for this portion?
Yeah. Yep. All right. And I think we have Araceli next.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Araceli Rivera. I'm the Homeownership and Financial Education Manager here at Wayfinders. I do a lot of also projects, and I just came to, refreshing my skills, learn new skills, hear what's new out there. My favorite scary movies, I love scary movies. I love them with a passion. There's too many to name, but if I had to name one, I would say Insidious, Part 3.
Right. That is a good one. I'm gonna venture to say I've seen anything that anyone's gonna name, but let's see if someone proves me wrong. I'm a movie buff, sorry. Thank you, Araceli. Great to have you here. We've got Irene up next.
Good morning. My name is Irene. I am the marketing manager for the Markhams Group, which is an association management company. So I work with nonprofits, managing their day-to-day operations and running marketing campaigns. And I came here today because I am big into account management, project management, and program management at my company. Yeah, I'm not a big scary movie gal. Definitely not. I've been watching Rent on repeat actually recently, so pretty much the opposite of scary movies. So I would say that my go-to is probably Scream, because it's not scary, but it is a classic. So.
All right, and supposedly based on a true story too.
Didn't know that. Now it's scarier to me. So.
Right. See, I'm full of good, useful, nonsensical facts here today. Thank you, Irene. Great to have you. Kate.
Which one? There are two of us.
Sorry, Kate. Kate Carr is first on the list.
So I'm Katie Carr. I guess that's the difference, right? Kate and Katie.
Yes, sorry, looking quick at that.
What am I saying? I work for Helltown Land Trust. I'm the engagement manager there, which means I do all the development and communications work. I'm one of those people that Dan was talking about. There's two of us. We're both part-time, coming off the busiest month of the year and going into end of year fundraising. So I'm hanging on by a thread today. But I'm excited to be here because project management is definitely one of my big accountability goals. Really want to improve in that area, because I'm always juggling like way too many different things and trying to stay on top of all of it, and where I am with everything is I really want to get on top of that. So I'm excited about that. Scary movies, I'm not a huge scary movie person, but my husband is, so I end up seeing more than I want to. But my favorite ones are ones that are funny. So I don't feel just scared constantly. Hate jump scares. I liked, what have I seen? Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a really fun one.
All right. And Katie, appreciate you taking the time out of a very crazy schedule. Hopefully we can get you to some learning opportunities that do help you in the project, juggling the many things in your world. So great to have you. Kate Devlin. Kate this time, not KT.
So I'm Kate Devlin. I work for Greenfield Community College, where I'm the coordinator of student assessment and also adjunct science faculty. And I came to the session because I do manage a bunch of small projects, and I'm always looking for more ideas on how to better manage things. I hate scary movies. I actively avoid them. But I have watched the old ones like Alfred Hitchcock. Those come to mind.
All those count. Birds, Vertigo, like all the classics. All right, thanks Kate. Appreciate you being here as well. Who do we have next here? Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Rowe. I work for the City of Greenfield in community development. And I came to the session because I wanted to be on the same page as my teammates. So I feel like it's really handy to have one point that you're working from. And also we got a new program assistant at work recently. And now there are 3 of us on the team and 1 is brand new. So we need some new project management pieces. And I'd really like to be able to do that. And my favorite scary movie, I'm going with Home Alone.
Everything counts in this session. So yeah, that's a classic too. Thank you, Lindsay, for being here again. Hopefully we can kind of give some information that's going to be helpful in truly working past this session and beyond LPV as well. Great. I think we've got Ledivette next.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Liddy Vet. I work with Springfield Public Schools in the Human Resources Department. Came to the session today because I want to learn best practices on project management. So just want to continue developing those skills. And I don't think I would call it a favorite scary movie because after a certain age, it's like, there's things that I don't do anymore. I used to love scary movies. That doesn't happen anymore. But I would say E.T. because to me, it is a scary movie because I'm terrified of it.
Okay. It's a first I've heard is E.T. being described as a scary movie, but I appreciate it, surely. Thank you for being here. Mindy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mindy Richter. I'm the grants director for the Springfield Public Schools. My entire life and career is project management. Basically, we research, write, and manage all the grants for the school department from $2,000 to our current largest one is $160 million. So it's always great to hear some new skills and techniques and what's out there and share with each other. My favorite scary movie, I'm going a little bit old school, is Children of the Corn.
It's held up over time, although when you look back at it, it's a little definitely 80s. Thank you, and Mindy, appreciate that. Like that's a good wide swing of work that you're kind of running against there. So thanks for coming in. All right, I think Monique is next. Oh, Monique may, we'll circle back and if Monique is just had to step away for a second. How about Nicole?
Good morning, everyone. I'm actually driving, that's why my camera's off, but I'm going to pull over. Nicole Coakley, Assistant Director of the Center for Service and Leadership at Springfield College. So I do a lot of community service programs and a lot of outreach and event planning with the students and members of the community. My favorite, I'm here to learn more. I'm like a lifetime learner, so I love learning. You can never know too much. So I'm just here to learn more and to really better myself. And my favorite movie is All of the Hills Have Eyes.
Oof, brutal, but well
love
done.
it.
for what they are, yeah. Not for the lighthearted. Thank you.
No.
Thanks for being here. All right, I think we've got Pamela next.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name's Pam Rivera. I'm a good old-fashioned bedside nurse from Bay State Medical Center. I work at the bedside. So as far as project management, I've been a participant, not necessarily a leader. So maybe perhaps in future projects, we always have projects going on at the hospital. After today, you'll help me instill that confidence to become a leader of a project. I always have good ideas and I bring them to the people that I think can move them forward, but I just need that confidence to gain to run the whole shebang. In terms of my favorite scary movie, I'm not a big scary movie fan, but I'm going to go for One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, seeing as though I'm a nurse. I do appreciate the old Alfred Hitchcock movies as well. Probably Psycho. I do like Psycho as well. So we'll go with those.
Laura named that in the chat. That's definitely one for sure. Thank you. Thanks for being here. All right, and Ramosa.
Ramos? Amelia?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going by
Yes,
what's on the screen. Apologies for.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Amelia Ramos. I work for the Adult Education Center for the Springfield Public Schools. I am the assessment coordinator as well as the assistant manager for our program. And I joined today's session because I would like to improve my skills around project management and to learn more of everything that you have to offer. Scary movies, I do not watch scary movies at all. I mean, Jaws was scary for me, so no, yeah, I do not watch scary movies, but I do enjoy The Godfather. I do enjoy those movies.
Scary elements there, but you named Jaws, like that is literally my all-time favorite classic just movie, and is still scary. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that counts for sure. Great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you don't want me to, if you could change your name, if you know how to do that, that actually helps. But Amelia, I've got it. So
no, that's fine. I don't mind. That's
okay.
Fine.
All right, Rian.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So I'm Rian. I work for Bay State Health as well as a data analyst in strategy and business development department. So the reason bring me here is, I mean, this is my early stage of my career. I haven't been like experienced of project management, but I'm very interested to learn it. And also because my recent work function has been expanded to allow me to lead some project and in now and in the near future. So I would love to learn more today. And as for the horror movie, so I think I'm very interested in watching them, but never be able to watch the whole of it. But I think one of the most impressive one is The Ring in Japanese version. Yeah, so that's my favorite.
That you've called that out appropriately. Like we have there's a lot of remakes of American movies that started as these really intense Japanese horror movies, and that Ringu is the original name.
Yes.
Yeah, that version of it is terrifying. So great call out there.
Yeah, it just like make the horror not by jump out, but use the very familiarized your life environment to create that feeling.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. Appreciate that as well. Looks like we've got Ryan up next.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ryan Windica. I'm the Director of Membership at the Scantic Valley YMCA. Going on 16 years with the organization, so looking forward to the next 16. I'm at this session today for just looking for ways to better execute project management within our organization going into 2022. And I would say probably my favorite scary movie is Step Brothers.
A favorite comedy movie of mine, but yeah, I'm gonna it counts. Counting everything. Okay, thank you. And Sam.
Hi, Sam Merkel. I work for the City of Greenfield DPW. I'm our field superintendent. I run our water and sewer departments and basically all of our field operations. So we're constantly hammering away on projects, and I feel that I'm here today to figure out some ideas for follow-up. We execute, and never kind of go back and thank the guys and get them engaged on why we're doing what we do. Favorite scary movie, probably something with Freddie and Jason. Those guys with this, the hockey helmet there scared the heck out of me because I'm a hockey guy.
Yeah, going back to the classics. Yeah, it gets thin after like the 7th or 8th or 9th or 12th version of it, but yeah. Sam, we do talk about this a little bit. Remind me if we have time, we can dig in a little bit more, and I'll preemptively say if there's any follow-up that anyone wants to have around something you'd like to dive deeper in, we'll share contact information at the end of the call here today. But lessons learned is an exceptionally important part where both you're congratulating as well as learning on what you did and kind of circling back for the next project. All the concepts we're talking about today are not only relatable across project management as a discipline. So it is not specific to software development. It is not specific to healthcare or nonprofit or for-profit work or construction or whatever it might be. So glad to have you here, and some of the feedback so far that we've heard of why people are here. We're hoping to hit those points and give you more of the kind of exposure and experience in hands-on tools. So thanks, Sam, for bringing that piece of it up. We'll definitely touch on it, but there's a lot more. That's not going to be something we'll heavily focus on, but we can always kind of catch up on that further. And I'll make one last stab here before we move on. Monique, are you with us here? All right, we'll keep moving and circle back as we need. All right, let me go back to screen share here and we'll get back into it. And thank you all again for those thoughts. I forced people to name scary movies, and about 25% actually named scary movies, which is the par for the course. We're perfectly on target. All right, let me get you back on, and folks are seeing the introduction slide. There we go. Thanks, Laura. All right, let's keep moving on. So this one a little bit less intensive. So does anyone here actually have the title of project manager? Okay, and we'll just do kind of hands ups or thumbs ups. But many people are managing projects as a part of their roles. So this is good to know for just the context of what we're working on. Regardless of title, just remind me, how many people are actively managing projects day to day? Most of the room. So good to know. And for those of you that are managing projects, does anyone currently, didn't sound like it, but is anyone currently using a defined methodology such as Waterfall, Agile, Lean, Six Sigma, anything like that? Okay, great to just have that understanding of kind of who you all are in terms of the project management aspect of this. Who's pumped to learn more about project management? All hands being raised, everyone across the board. Even if you're not, I'm going to assume your hand is up. I won't even look at the screen. All right, let's. Google is not liking that. Okay, so session goals, super quick. Let me get the chat up here in a different screen so I can see if anything comes up. We do want to introduce some of these formal PM concepts and processes. We're not going, this is not meant to be that, you know, like how to be a PM by the PMI standards, but I do want to make sure we touch on some of that. And again, some of it, if you're not super interested in project management, is a little dry, so I won't linger in any specific place too long. We're going to discuss some practices and tools, including kind of common practices and tools, best practices that folks could use on a day-to-day basis as they walk away. Providing some practical information. We'll try to get a couple of hands-on exercises in here, as well as experiential insight for use on your LPV projects. So both Amy and I are going to talk about, you know, roles and you know, interject commentary around our experiential point of view, but please do take those opportunities to share things that you've run into. I've been in project management for, you know, 15, 16 years. Literally every day I'm still learning new things. It's just it's a lifelong learning process because it's such a wide array of project types and practices and styles and techniques. And you know, you can just live in this space for your entire career if you want to. Have a small amount of fun along the way. So you're seeing, be engaged, but chat, throw out discussion points, ask questions, you know, show your cat off if they're walking by. I'm good with that. Like, let's have a little bit of fun with it. It makes the delivery easier as well. Kitty, looks like you saw the 30 Rock episode about Six Sigma. Good. So you know there's a thing out there. Disclaimers, this will not make you an expert at all things project management, just kind of leaping off of what I just spoke to. People make their careers being formal project managers and directing project management teams. Depending on field and practice and style and methodology, you could do this for 50 years and still be learning new things every day. So just know that this is a primer, it's an intro, but we really want to give you some tools that might be helpful as you're working through your own LPV projects, as well as takeaways for your day-to-day work. We do want to introduce you to many of the more common elements of project management and some ways you can apply these best practices to your projects. All right, so this is the eye-glazing definition straight out of the project management book body of knowledge. But to be true to the life that I live in here, a project is a specific thing. It's a temporary endeavor to create a unique product, service, or result. Products versus programs is what we're talking about. It's not a repeatable, we do the same thing every year. It's the temporary nature of it indicates a definite beginning and end. You start a project, you finish the project, and you might start a new similar project, but it won't be the same thing. When the end is reached and the project's objectives have been achieved, or when the project is terminated because its objectives will not or cannot be met, or when the need for the project no longer exists. So a project will end one way or another. It could be a 5 or 10 year project. It could be a 1 month project, but it does have a defined end. There's a goal state, like this is what we end with at this point, and we close the work. So there is a difference, very big difference between a running program that is cyclical versus multiple similar projects that might run back to back or be tied together in phases. Project management, again, right from the book, is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So project management is accomplished through the appropriate application and integration of logically grouped project management processes. I underline and stop and point to the appropriate application and integration. I'm going to talk, and Amy's going to speak to a lot of different things today in the realm of formal project management. We're also going to talk about very practical things. It is always about the appropriate application. You are not going to use the same process for, you know, Mindy, your $15,000 grant project versus the, you know, $116 million grant project. There's a whole separate set of tools and techniques there. If you're building a birdhouse, you are not going to have a 100-page project management plan. You're going to have a whiteboard where you jot down a couple, I need nails, a hammer, a couple of pieces of wood, and some paint. On the other end of it, there's very complex technical projects where you will have multiple tools and processes in place to help guard the actual process itself. always be thinking about not overburdening yourself and your team with too much. Size it appropriately for the work that you've got in front of you. So that's the big takeaway on this is don't worry about what project management is, but apply the appropriate tools, techniques, and processes to it. No project management discussion goes without talking about our friend here, which is what we call the iron triangle. If you're thinking about this in practical terms around how you might better manage projects at your organization, you're probably already thinking about it in these terms of a triangle of legs that if one changes, one other one has to adapt to it. So we have scope, which is typically features and functionality. We have resources, which is people, budget, dollars, hours, or just hands. And schedule, which is the kind of deadlines and estimated timeline of the project work. If you are to change one of those elements, something on the triangle has to break and adjust for it. So for example, you can change the scope of a project, and it happens all the time. You can add more, you can take more away, but that is going to impact one other leg of this triangle. So if I'm building a website and initially it's just, we need 5 static pages that just relay information and is not really going to change, fine, everything holds constant. If suddenly someone decides we need to create a shopping cart on this website, that's additional functionality that you're going to need either more time to do, more resources, maybe someone else with a different skill set, or more dollars to actually accomplish. So this is just a great visual, as you're probably already all thinking about it in these terms, but if you want to describe this to someone, the iron triangle of constraints around project work is one of those methods you can use to describe it. Like, hey, we need to get more done. We can't just simply do more without changing some other element. So when your boss says, hey, we need to get this done in 3 weeks instead of 6 weeks, you say, great, I need more people or budget, or we need to reduce the scope or the features that we're trying to build out here. So there's always something that has to adjust for something else in this space. Does that make sense? Any questions about it? It's one of the things I love about the formal processes around project management is it's all logically based. There's not meant to be any deep thought around the process. It's supposed to be logical and make good sense. Project manager defined. And so in some ways, even if you're not formally managing projects, everyone is managing some element of work on their day-to-day basis. Knowing it's the managing of the work, not always the doing. For those folks that do have to wear multiple hats, Katie, you're one of those people. You sometimes have to do and manage, and that becomes challenging in itself. It's great because you can have a hand in the outcomes, but managing the process is an important element of this. So sometimes you get to be the pure project manager. Sometimes you are doing and managing at the same time, as well as managing others or working alongside a project team. From accidental to disciplined, and we have this mix in the room here. Some folks are just given a project to manage, and you're then scrambling to figure out the best way to do it, and also convince others on this is the best way to do it, and here's the logic of why. The discipline side, when you kind of start earning certifications and working in a more formal projectized environment, there's clusters of people working around you that understand and are grouped into a projectized mode of thinking, and so the paths and processes are slightly easier because everyone understands this is how we do the work. When you're not in a projectized environment, it becomes a little bit more challenging, and you have to do a little bit more convincing of the right path to go. You have to know, as a project manager, know your project environment, organizational culture and structures, and I started leading into this just a second ago. If you're working in a functional organization, and there's a clear example of this, I have a slide coming up next, where you have kind of functional managers of departments, but you might have kind of project managers who work within that. A projectized environment where project managers sit at the top of the food chain, and then a matrix environment where it's much more blended, and you might have a project management office and someone heading that up that works within. So there's different ways to think about that in the environmental structure. This is an example of kind of one of those more matrixed environments where, yes, you have functional managers who have staff under them in departmental structures, but in this case, and this is similar to the environment I work in, I am the manager of project managers, and my project managers then pull from the team kind of laterally and have project teams that develop out of existing structures. This can be a very challenging structure to work within. It depends on the organizational culture, how cooperative people are. But if you think about it, a project manager temporarily needs to pull a group of people together that they don't oversee and they don't actually have kind of command over in terms of being their bosses. So having good relationships cross-functionally between your functional managers across the entire organization becomes vital to success of the work you're doing. So this is one of the examples. This is a kind of a classical matrixed environment where you have functional managers and kind of a project management office that is running high-end projects aside from that. Right, I will keep going. So continuing on, who the project manager is. And so, think about yourself in these and think about people who run projects in your organizations. Who the project manager is, you have to have many personalities and wear many hats through that process. You have to be an influencer. You have to be a presenter. You have to be an organizer. You're an accountability manager and sometimes a punching bag. If you're accountable, sometimes you have to take the hits. You're often a buffer if you have project teams or people you're working alongside with and people over them or over yourself. You're trying to make peace and keep things moving along the way. A communicator, and I can't stress this enough and probably won't say it enough as we move through, a project management interview question, what is the most important thing? I point to communication every time, all the time. If someone is not being a good communicator, everything else fails and falls down around it. Project manager has to be that thing, and you have to encourage it from your teams, but the PM cannot keep themselves siloed. So even if you're not a formal project manager, communicate, over communicate until people are sick of it, but at least everyone knows and you've done your job as well as you possibly can. Easier said than done in some organizational structures, but it's something that's highly important in this process. And finally, and this is appropriate to, and I didn't create this slide for LPV, but this is a room full of leaders, and you have to be a leader when you're managing work, especially work with others. You have to know when to give focus to your SME subject matter experts. So giving focus to them, but also pulling back that shine of light and continuing to keep a project team or a project focused and moving forward. So relying on the folks that know best on some of the key elements that you need to work with, but you ultimately need to wrangle this back together and move it ahead. Staying on task while focused on the big picture. If you are doing as well as managing, this sometimes gets a little bit blurry, but you always have to be able to step back and really keep an eye on the big picture and make sure that everyone around you is not focused there moment to moment because they have to do their day-to-day work, but they do need to occasionally have the reminder of, okay, you can't get lost in this tiny thing because we have bigger elements that have to keep moving forward, and troubleshooting and helping them overcome those barriers. Keep the project moving forward. Promoting positivity and inspiring confidence. The unseen asterisk there is, don't be a fake cheerleader. Don't just promote positivity for the sake of positivity. I treasure and value taking those moments along the way to recognize with my teams that something is wrong, something has failed, we've made a misstep, something has gone sideways. Hey, let's just whine about it for a second, and then we've got to pick ourselves up and positively move forward. It's okay to acknowledge problems. You're not going to overcome a problem, and it could just stew and develop into something worse unless you point to it and look at it. But promote the positive side of, this is a problem, let's figure out how to fix it, and let's move the whole thing forward from there. So that's the positivity side. Maintain that. And through challenging times, the PM can't be the one who's down in the dumps. They've got to be the one to help pick the team up primarily. Above all else, be realistic. Sometimes things do get off track. Be real, be positive, make sure the team understands what next steps need to be taken, or take their advice and understand how to develop it and mold it into next concrete steps. So this is all kind of the role that you all play in some capacity around being a project manager, formal or not, but that is the persona that you're kind of pursuing here. There's a lot of characteristics that you have to maintain, and all this ultimately rolls up under being a good leader of yourself, your teams, your projects, and within your organizational structures. Amy, anything that you would add experientially to that list?
Nope, I think you've covered it.
All right. Anything of the, so leader being this last one here, but even from these other lists, anything that folks have encountered that I can add to this slide in some future iteration? Anything that you think is also important that we haven't kind of called out specifically here? All right. I always take resounding silence as, hey, Dan, you're doing an amazing job. Good definitions of this. There's more, but I think most of it rolls up under these buckets of characteristics of someone who's managing projects and leadership. All right. Let's keep going. So in other words, it's like herding cats. This is my now 10-year-old stolen internet meme that probably still exists somewhere. But yes, you're going to see some other crappy memes like this littered later in the presentation. Everyone's favorite, herding cats. So your ability to consult and manage can make or break a project, including defining, refining, continually testing actions against, and the true goals of the project. Managing and balancing relationships, personalities, hidden stakeholders, making sure you know who your stakeholders are. It's not just your boss. It's not just the people who might be impacted. There's often a wider hidden audience that is going to be impacted. Establishing these true leadership techniques customized to the project and the team, and avoid simply being the mailman, mail person. I need to update my slides here. You're not just delivering news. You are a person who is engaged actively. You need to be guiding, directing, absorbing information, helping to make decisions. So don't just deliver information. Avoid that concept, because once you fall into that, you will often lose project teams who will then understand that you're not going to push back against anything that comes up. And that is a recipe for down the line disaster as you move along the way. So it's not just delivering information as a PM, it's absorbing, helping to guide, as well as making some key decisions as you move through. All right, so we're about an hour in and not too far off track here. So I think what we're gonna do is take a quick, take a 15-minute break, grab a coffee, stretch your legs, walk away, take care of some other things for a few minutes. Let's call this, it's 9:54, so let's call this 10:10. We'll see everybody back here. And what we're gonna do is just a brief exercise. We'll break people out into virtual groups, and we're gonna do a breakout group exercise where you're going to take your kind of knowns around your project assignments for LPV and start thinking about and writing down like a project purpose. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the exercise when we come back from break at 10:10, but let's pause here. And I'll see everyone in a couple of minutes. Thanks all. And please stay connected. Laura, anything? I saw your note in the chat here.
Yeah, do you want to go into, I've got the breakout room set up.
You have them all set up already?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So when we'll do just a quick quick review of what we're going to be asking folks to do when they get back from the break, and then I'll signal you to hit the go button to break people out.
Okay, and how long do you want them in the groups?
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes, great. And one thing that I just want to add, because they're so like early in the process, you know, I think something good for them to think about in the purpose is their purpose as a team, not just what the nonprofit wants.
Yeah, and I think if folks are struggling with, so I've got an example of kind of what we developed as a purpose, just to give people ideas around what a project purpose is, but we'll put that in there as well. It's not only what the team's purpose is, it's the team's purpose as well as the project purpose. So if they come back with something written in terms of a purpose, and if they have enough context for that to make it, great. If not, we'll ask for some kind of report back from teams. If they didn't come up with a written project purpose, what else did they talk about in terms of their team's purpose?
Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to, give that caveat to help them so that they, don't feel stuck because they don't know yet what they plan to do.
Yeah, no, yeah, totally. And this is the flexible piece of this exercise, where if they don't know enough yet, but maybe they can be developing a sentence of it or two of an idea, but otherwise it's, what is the team's purpose in this, overall through like the LPV experience and working with the nonprofit. So
perfect.
All right, I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks. Exercise. There we go. Thanks, Laura. We know that you've got kind of clients and a kind of project concept you're working with, but some of you or all of you may not be quite far along enough to create a true kind of project purpose statement or summary. So this could work in a couple of different ways. And I'm one for walking into a group exercise and having some type of clear direction and outcome. So in a perfect world, you would all have been just slightly further along, where you would have a better understanding of truly what the project intent is, goals, and kind of in process at this point. I know some of you are just a little bit earlier. So there's two ways you can go with this, or you could do both at the same time if you're go-getters, but you've only got about 10 minutes when we break out. We'd like the groups, when we get you in the breakout rooms, to just spend a couple of minutes as a team brainstorming. Someone kind of jot some things down, use a Google Doc or whatever you've got in front of you, even an email that you could share with the rest of your team. But one or the other or both, we'd like folks to think about their project purpose. So I'll paste this into the chat for the Zoom chat, so you've got it in front of you once you break out. But traditionally here, a summary of the business justification for the project. What is your client looking for? What have you been asked to do? It should be written in a way that the project team members, without a detailed understanding of the background and history, can understand and should seek to answer the question, why is this project being done? So if your team has enough context, or at least enough idea at this point to be thinking in those terms, please do actually collaborate on a couple of sentences. Could be one well-crafted sentence, could be a couple of sentences, and I'll share an example in a second here. Or alternatively, if you're not quite there yet and the team really doesn't have a good solid grasp of it, we'll talk about the team purpose. And we will ask for some quick report outs, just how people accomplish the goal, if they came up with something foundationally solid for themselves. So if you can come up with project purpose, great. If not, think about your team purpose. What's our goal as a team in learning, growing, collaborating, serving the client org, serving the community? What are you all here to do as a team? And what would you develop out as the team purpose? So one or the other, as long as you're focusing on at least one of these, that's what the ask is going to be coming into the next 10 minutes of time once we break you out. So on the project purpose side, my team, we were a little bit further along at that point. So please don't use this as, oh, we must produce something like this, because there's actually more, but I gave just the core of it. Team Quabbin, my group, developed this as a part of our overall project scope document. And I will also post this in the Zoom chat as well, just so you have the example. But try to create that understanding of, all right, this is what we're aiming to do. And there was a little bit more, but this team doesn't need to consider all the rest of the finer details yet. So this is an example. It is not the goalpost. It doesn't have to be this far along. But if you can come up with kind of that key element here of, if we didn't know anything else, what do we think we're doing? What is the purpose of what we're about to take on for the client? So I'll drop both of these in the Zoom chat channel here, both the prior slide, which is what you're going to accomplish, either the project purpose statement, a couple of sentences that everyone agrees is the core of what you're going to be chasing here, or your team purpose, where maybe you haven't gelled up as much as you'd like to as a team. Like, what are you kind of trying to accomplish? Does that all make sense to the group? Okay, so Laura, as you're about to hit the button there, I will get this detail into the actual Zoom chat. So if anyone has any questions as you start to consider this, please use the Zoom chat for everyone, because other people may be thinking about the same, like, oh, I'm not sure where and how this might work. Feel free to post it to everyone, and anyone can respond to that, but certainly Laura, Amy, myself will respond and kind of monitor this over the next couple of minutes. So people have good concepts to change for purpose, and more folks move over to kind of team purpose. Actually, let's, Laura, maybe you can call out teams, and we just have one person from each team give us a quick feedback on how their session went.
Awesome. Maybe we can just end the screen sharing for a minute.
Yes.
Awesome. So why don't I start with red team?
Lindsay.
All right, I'm going, I guess. So we did our project, and I think we haven't met with our group yet, but we kind of have a sense of what they want. And so I think we were able to articulate a couple of goals and purposes for the Valley Eye Radio. So we were excited about that, and it seemed to work pretty well.
Awesome.
Are you guys willing to share a little bit of what the purpose? Because I think it'd be great for other people to hear what folks think they're doing.
I muted myself too soon. Yes, I was just gonna copy and paste it into the chat. Does that make sense? Or well, so it says to expand the reach of Valley Eye Radio and improve the life of people through access to local news. To improve the quality. Oh, see, this is the. Hang on. This is why we didn't prove. So that we improve the quality of life and increase connection to communities for those living with disabilities, and then to bring outreach and awareness to those who could use the service or know people who could use the service. So we're doing a lot of quality of life. It's double quality of life.
In a 10-minute session, which we forced you out of, typos and broken sentences are okay. This is all draft, right? Thank you.
All right, why don't we move to the green team?
Is that us? Are we green?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So we have River East, and we did our project focus, as the agency is putting a renewed focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as it pertains to the board of directors. The goal of the project is to create a strategic recruitment process for existing and future board members.
Awesome. Just curious, did it naturally come? Have you, as the team, had a chance to kind of think about this a little bit deeper at this point, or is it that you just all gelled up in the room?
So we met yesterday. Since having our selection or knowing which project we're working on, we actually met with the executive director yesterday in our team meeting to go over what their expectations are. So we were able to, from that meeting, produce what we have before you.
Outstanding. Hi, Laura, who's next?
Awesome. Why don't we go to the Hilltown homies?
All right, so mine is a little shoddy because it's on 2 pages, but what our purpose is onboarding community support to assist Estoy Aquí, bring awareness of social justice, trainings, community care circles, and culturally relevant outreach programs to the Latino, Latinx, and Black communities in the area.
That wasn't too bad on the 2 pages.
And
Sounded great.
Yeah, and we've also discussed, we've had some discussions around, like this is the work that we want to do.
That's awesome. Who's your project partner?
Our project partner, what do you mean? Estoy aquí.
Oh yes, I didn't hear it in the beginning. So
Estoy aquí.
Thank you. That's great. How about the Anchors Away?
Go for it, Sam.
Initially our project was going to be with the city of East Hampton, and they had 2 options in there, and they were leaning towards the second option once we had selected the first option. So our group is sort of in a regrouping phase. So Kate and I went back to our team purpose, which was to collectively work together with our team of professionals to strengthen the community within the Pioneer Valley for a team purpose.
And that it sounds right. Obviously, if you're between, you don't know which exact thing, you've just regrouped on it. So the project itself is still a little bit in flux. Is there anything more? So, we heard a little bit from, is it just you and Kate from that team in here? Yeah, heard a little bit from you kind of around personal goals of even this session. Do those blend in well with what your team purpose is? Like, is the discussions you've had with your team so far lined up around any further kind of personal or professional development? Or is it truly everyone, sometimes you do get that great team unity around, hey, we're really all super focused on helping the local community in this regional area?
Yeah, I think so. Kate, do you want to speak anything on that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to speak when the rest of our team isn't here and we haven't necessarily had this particular conversation. I think we all come from different backgrounds and have different strengths. And I think we really we seem to gel together as a group. And we just want to sort of pool our resources to do something successfully.
Great. Thank you.
Makes sense. All right. And last but not least, I've got the perfect strangers.
Yeah, we again, our whole team's not here, and we haven't gotten a chance to meet with our community partner yet, who is the Association of Black Business Professionals. So we focused on the team purpose and said, together we wish to make a real positive impact within the community while building our own skills and developing long-lasting relationships within the team and the broader business community.
Sounds good. When I was at the UMass Center, we did a fair amount of work with the Association of Black Business Professionals working downtown. Is Daryl Moss one of the contacts you have over there? Okay. Daryl's a great guy. Worked alongside him a lot in that space.
Is he a part of it?
Is he a part of that group?
I'm not sure. Our contact person is Kareem Kidboard. I can't even pronounce his last name.
Kabodia. Yeah, so this is a project from last class that's being continued.
Oh, that's exciting. All right, Laura, do we have any other teams for report back here?
That's everybody. So great job, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone. All right, so let's keep us moving along. And I will share screen again. Okay. One slide that got displaced around kind of the defining the project manager in SMEs, and I think this was just worth revisiting briefly because this does get into some of the challenges in different areas that you might be working in. You've got subject matter experts, your SMEs out there, or SMEs as you might hear randomly. Don't forget about that team and their expertise. There's so many pitfalls and areas to consider whenever you're working on any type of project. Again, don't lock yourself into what the term project means. Local laws and ordinances, privacy rights and issues when working with data, and I'd highlight that one. Data and cybersecurity have just become such a massive topic and can be excessively expensive if you are mishandling sensitive data and materials, especially if you're working with a client. So please be very conscious and careful of privacy rights and issues when working with data. But past that, whether you're working in a physical or even a political environment, there's issues that you should kind of note, jot, track in an issues tracking device or even a spreadsheet. There's always things that are easy to walk by and miss in your day-to-day work. Internal and organizational structures and policies, making a change might sound great and be logical until someone who owns that area of your org or business says, we can't do that because, and if you're not kind of tapping all resources and meeting with the right people early on when you're planning stages, you can really step into a lot of these landmines. You may be looking to change an established process, and from many years of experience, and I'm sure everyone here has stories, people don't like change generally. Often you get people excited about the concept of change in a very positive way, like, oh, we're using all these disparate systems internally, and it would be great if we could consolidate into one space. But everyone who's excited there also has a pit in their stomach about my day-to-day is going to change, and I'm not sure what it's going to look like or feel like going forward. Or am I going to have a job when we do this big consolidation of all these disparate systems we use internally into one nice, software package or whatever it might be. So change can be really, really challenging. And it doesn't have to be a project. And the example I always give here is moving the water cooler in the kind of common kitchen area at work will disrupt the world of work if you haven't kind of talked to people about, hey, I'm thinking about this. And then everyone will have problems with what you've done just by simply moving the water cooler from the left side of the room to the right side of the room. It goes from very simple, easy change that you just don't think is going to be a problem to very complex change where it's going to be a problem, but you can't quite get people on board. And there's a whole area of project management around change management that is worth looking into if you experience those types of issues in your day-to-day. So be very conscious of whenever you're making a change, it is going to impact someone, and some people are going to be okay with it and some are not going to be okay with it. Continuing to move on here. So I will move through this fairly quickly. For those that are interested in knowing more about project management as the discipline, this is the organization that they have a website. There's just endless resources, a lot of free resources as well to look into if you ever want to get your certifications. They have a bunch of different certifications. A PMP, Project Management Professional, is one of them. PMI.org is, or .com at this point. They are the official global organization that holds all of this, including tracking certifications and credits and professional development units. So if you are looking to learn more and going deeper into the world of formal project management, looking at and getting your certification is great. It doesn't make you a great project manager, but it does force you to do the study and the research around what the entire landscape of project management looks and feels like in a more defined manner. So I encourage anyone who's got any interest in this to look into it a little bit further. I referenced this earlier, the project management, the guide to the project management body of knowledge, the PMBOK guide, is the book that no one will ever read. It's this massive tome of knowledge. Every process you could possibly imagine is defined in this area. A great source of information, but no one literally is going to sit down and read this, and I don't encourage people to do it. Otherwise, you may just kind of black out and not wake up and be in a coma. It's a great source for what this all looks like, but there's certainly better ways to distill this information and absorb it in better manners. So just know that that's the source material behind it. So when we're talking about project management in that formal methodology stance, the formal disciplinary stance, these are some of those focus areas within that environment. And I'll just pull a few here. Project scope management, project time management, project cost management along the left-hand side of the left column here. These are all areas that there is endlessly more detail about, and you can dive deeper, but just know that somewhere someone is working dedicatedly within these areas, and a project manager has to have enough understanding around all of them. Even if you're not actively saying, oh, I'm working on procurement management, next week. If you're purchasing, if you're establishing a process to purchase as a part of a project process, you are working on procurement. And so you should know that there's detail out there around best practices, around what everyone else has ever done. You don't need to reinvent the wheel around anything specific to project management. It's often more navigating personalities and communication issues. So know that this is all out there. We'll note project risk management a little bit here as well, but a lot of these are near and dear to me, but I'm not that near and dear to them that I would spend too much time in this conversation. Another artifact from the PMBOK guide and really the project management study guide is breaking down the knowledge areas and the project management process groups. And so if we think about the life cycle of project work, you initiate, you talk about getting into a project. Right now, the group, like this LPV group, is in a planning phase of work. And so you're in the planning process groups, and there's all these things that you could be doing if you were working on something much more complex. When you're executing, you're actually doing, and that was it, Sam, you had talked about it, we're always executing and getting work done, but we're never actually kind of going back and doing the things that are right, which is lessons learned, really supporting and holding people up for the great work they've done. All that falls into all of this, and it's talked about through this PMI process. Monitoring, controlling is the overall watching for what's going on and controlling issues. And then closing, of course, when a project ends, there's often a bunch of things that need to be done to formally close out the work, including getting the agreement that the work is done from your boss, your project sponsor, a client, if you're working externally, all those good things. You're not done until everyone agrees that you're done, whether the project fully completes or not. So I'll move through these as well a little bit quicker. Please ask questions, but this is about the process, and this is typically where eyes can glaze, so I don't take offense to that. But if you think about it in the simplest terms, in project management in the simplest terms, everything is a series of inputs and outputs. Every process and step you take, one thing leads to another. So in this example, I'm taking project stakeholder management out of one of those focus areas. In the initiating phase, early in the project, you are identifying stakeholders. You may just write down all their names. It could just be a couple of people you work with. In the planning phase of a project, you are planning how to manage against those stakeholders. Whether you're writing something down or just thinking about it, like, oh, this person is a tough character, I'm really going to need to spend extra time. You've just planned stakeholder management. You're figuring out how you're going to work with different people who are involved. When you're executing, you are managing the stakeholders, and so you're actively communicating, you're working on how to deal with any concerns that they might have. And then the monitoring and controlling process is nebulous around that execution through the project close of you're constantly watching and being aware and actively taking steps to either proactively respond or reactively respond if something comes up. So just describing how these things fit together, if you multiply this out against all the different focus areas, you can see there's a lot there. A lot of it happens in people's heads, but when you get very high levels of complexity and scale of project work, you may actually have documentation to support all of this because you need to reference back because there's too many things that one person can't contain in their head. Moving on similarly here, so talking about kind of the tools that would go along with this. So again, still in stakeholder engagement, if you're controlling stakeholders, the inputs to this, you might have a project management plan, a written document that outlines who the stakeholders are, what their communication preferences are, all that good stuff. You may be maintaining an issue log. When problems arise, someone presents an issue, you are logging it and tracking it. You could have just general work performance data. How is the project progressing? Are we over budget? Are we not progressing on the timeline that we thought we were? As well as project documents, anything else that comes up along the way, maybe the actual end deliverable being drafted is part of that documentation. Keeping in mind that you don't have to use all these things, scale it appropriately, but there are tools out there that you can quickly just download samples of online for any of these items. So that was the input side. Those are the things that would roll into this. On the output side of this, work performance information, how well are we doing? How well is the work progressing on the project? Change requests, not change management, but actually requesting change. We need more budget. I need more people on this. I need more time to do this work. I'm requesting a change from whoever owns this project on the back end. You're updating the project management plan if there is a formal plan, and if it has complexity, you should have a project management plan. Project document updates, that's anything else associated with the work, and of course, any of the organizational processes, process assets, and that could just be working process. Hey, we're incrementally making changes as a part of this project, and we're updating source documentation that other people use to do their day-to-day work along the way. You've got to let them know that these changes are happening. And so all those organizational process assets that might be being affected, not just from your project manager perspective, but also for the people that are being impacted by the work you might be doing. So keeping everyone in the loop, using shared spaces. You know, we're going to point to Basecamp here later. Using tools like that to organize centrally around something is vitally important in this entire process. All makes sense for the moment here? Yeah, this is the place normally where I've delivered this presentation after hours, where people are opening a new beer and starting to drink. So that's the right time for it. Keep on moving here. So same concept, we're still talking about managing your stakeholders. Tools, I just referenced, like Basecamp is an information management system. Google Docs, also an information management system. Have something, even if it's a whiteboard shared amongst peers within, you know, an office space, have something where you're managing information in one place that people know where it is. Another tool you'll constantly be using, and everyone uses it every day, is your own expert judgment. That can always be improved with experience, but you do have expertise that you're applying, whether you think about it or not. And meetings, as much as we love and hate having to meet, you do need to meet with people. Again, try not to be siloed in your thought process. Share what you're thinking about. Even if it's a draft of an idea and you need to validate it, having a meeting with a team and collecting feedback, whether you act on the feedback or not, is vitally important to the process. Sometimes you'll just make a call and it'll be done, but often you'll get the team together and say, okay, we're having our status update. I'm thinking we can accelerate the timeline, but what am I not thinking about that might be hazards or pitfalls? In terms of stakeholder management, same thing, like, oh, we're having a problem with person A over here. Does anyone know more about what's eating them up and why they're being so kind of aggressive, or whatever that might be? So don't be siloed, meet with people, share information, be very proactive in that approach. Very similar. I think I'm just going to kind of cruise through this next one here. Well, this is a good graphic. So if you pull yourself back and you think about activity, time, and cost management, and really just think about, if you own something, if you're looking at this in terms of levels of process interaction, when we're talking about the stages of a project, again, we're in the planning process group in terms of LPV right now. You've initiated already. There was these concepts that were floating. There was solicitation of outside ideas, but the process interaction amongst the groups, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing, these process groups all interact in specific ways and have peaks and valleys of the level of interaction over the length and time of the project. We won't linger on this one. There's more to dive into here if you ever want to go further. Like, you can just look this up online through the PMI space. But just know that you can see how the different processes interact in the different spaces that they exist in their process groups. So not to get locked on this too deeply, because it doesn't always make immediate sense for folks who aren't steeped in it day to day. But looking at it a little bit differently, time and cost management as related to project management outputs. So this is a little bit clearer. If on the left hand, the x-axis, you're talking cost and staffing, and y is time. When you start the project, and you're talking here about cost and staffing levels. Starting a project, maybe just one or two people, just a couple of folks talking about it early in the process. As you start to organize and prepare, you're getting deeper in, there's more people, more inputs needed. And then when you get into the execution, the carrying out of the work, everyone's involved. That's the busy beehive area. And you really have to be focused on keeping the whole thing together, because there's so much happening during that period. And then as you close the project, there's a sharp ramp down. It's like you're checking boxes, letting people peel away, closing out the work, and ultimately kind of archiving and getting, after you've gotten sign off. So project charter early in the process, you're not really doing that with your LPV project, but in a way you are. You're getting permission from the client to do this work. That's a charter in ways. The project management plan guides you through organizing and preparing. That really details how you're going to carry out the work, not how you build the website, but how you plan on managing the team and the processes and the clients and all of the other things associated with the work. All the way through, that goes all the way through that's your guiding documentation all the way through to the accepted deliverable, and then ultimately kind of closing out archiving. So just understanding conceptually, yes, it all makes good sense. There's a few people involved early on. We get super busy while we carry out this whole process, and then we kind of quickly ramp down as the project closes out. Thumbs up on good logic there. Great. All right. And I'm going to move to the next one here, but this one's a little bit bigger, so it shows that same process kind of in a diagram manner with this monitoring and controlling in here. You're initiating the work, you're planning the work, you get into executing, and you may have to replan. And so there's this cyclical nature in the middle of it, and then ultimately moving towards closing. This nebulous bucket of monitoring and controlling, that's you owning the project work, watching over all, making the necessary adjustments, and kind of integrating all the teams in your process. And then just seeing this again, a project is a very specific point in time, but if you have multiple projects that are doing back-to-back work, in this example, this is cleaning up a hazardous waste site. These are separate projects. Each of them will close and then start new. And there's ways to kind of crash the schedule and do overlapping planning for each of these things. But if you look at it in the simplest manner of in a very linear fashion, we're decommissioning the hazardous waste facility. We go through our entire project life cycle. We close that. Then we start the waste removal and cleanup, go through the project life cycle and close it. And then ultimately we have to get into landscaping and repurposing the land use. And we go through an entire project life cycle and close it. So this is just kind of the high level visual of how those separate projects flow together and you can execute on. So let's talk just briefly here about some of the tools. We just talked about project purpose, and some teams went with team purpose as needed. When you're talking about the scope of work, when you enter into the project, you should have an understanding of what the scope of it is, what you're actually going to be doing. And this is something the team needs to understand, and in LPV terms, what your client is going to need to understand as well. So give the background and purpose, make sure that everyone understands truly what we're accomplishing, because I mean, my team and I kind of forced this on them, but they agreed, which was great. We actually had the client sign off on this, and we produce a scope statement that said, we are going to accomplish this for you. This is very clearly how we're going to carry out the work. And if all goes well, these would be the deliverables. Focusing on the process as a part of your LPV team is the core of this. You need to make sure that you're working through this as a group. Even if the project fails, you will have accomplished making sure that you all worked together and understood it and overcame the challenges. But having a client understand this, even if it's a paragraph in an email, you are developing a scope in some way. Also knowing what you're not supposed to do, because if you don't tell the client where it ends, they might assume that you're going to produce more than you thought you were, and that could bite you as you get late in the project and they say, well, we thought you were going to be doing this. And you can always point back to that original email or scope document and say, no, we said we were doing this and not this. And that will really help solve any future problem of misunderstanding, especially with very busy brains on all sides here. Status updates. I'm actually not going to do screen sharing because I realize we're going to run up against time. And I want to make sure Amy's got plenty of time to work through her stuff. We also have another kind of high level timeline hands-on exercise coming up here, but provide some type of status update. And Laura's going to share out a very basic Word document. You all have Basecamp, but in your day-to-day life, your professional careers and your jobs, develop a status update template that works for you and your stakeholders and use it. And you can adjust it, but we'll share a very basic one that you can use outside of Basecamp, but use Basecamp for your status updates as best you can for this work you're doing here. You just won't always have access to like a Basecamp or a Liquid Planner or something like that. You should share some of the basics. You won't really have budget, but where are we with the project detail? Are there any problems that we're running into around the scope or the schedule? Not as much budget in this case. Are there any issues or known risks that we need to address and that you need to point clearly to whoever you're reaching out to and giving this update to? So give a status update. I love risk management, but we don't have time for it. Make sure you know what risks are in your projects. If you know that there might be a problem coming up, identify it and jot it down somewhere. So if in your first meeting with your client, and hopefully that none of this never happens to anyone, but if you're in your first meeting with your client, they don't show up and they don't respond to you for 2 weeks, this is a known risk walking into any project that you may not have good client interaction. They may not be available. They may not be invested as well as you'd like them to be. That's a known risk on every project. Resourcing is a known risk on every project. You could have team members have family emergencies. You could have someone who has a real life emergency and is not going to be available. Share all your detail in a central place. If someone does have to step away, it shouldn't be the end of the project. It should be, okay, this is terrible, but how do we keep everything else going? So identify risks that might impact you further down the line early, understand them, and have a mental plan around how you might respond, or written plan if you get complex in your own personal and professional work. Response plans, who's responsible for responding, all that good stuff. Pay less attention to the word Gantt chart here because it is a good visual for folks who don't really want to live in the project space, but at least, and this is part of the exercise we want to walk into here, have a timeline. Like, you now know when your LPV experience is going to end. Start talking to your client early around when they need to see whatever your final deliverable shape looks like, and start planning backwards from there. And this is kind of what we're going to ask folks to kind of start looking at this and thinking about it. You don't need to know exactly what your project plan is. We are going to ask folks to just kind of look at this at a higher level and say, our project has started. We know when we are doing our kind of showcase or end of year wrap up, whether in person or virtually. Let's start thinking about what milestones and impacts other things on all of our schedules might have on us, and start getting a high level timeline in place, and not just having it in a Word document somewhere or in 3 different places, but one central timeline that you track. You could use something sophisticated, and Basecamp has tools. You could create Gantt charts, but you don't have to. At least it's something written in chronological order, and then you can actually start breaking that down and assigning people to work. I'm going to breeze through some of this here. Stakeholder management, we talked about a little bit. Work breakdown structure. When you have a timeline, and you actually better than timeline, when you know what your project is, if you look at it as here's what we're doing, you should be able to start as a team breaking out the specific elements that become the smaller bite-sized chunks that you need to roll up into the overall project work. And let's just say you're writing a book. Very simply, you need to do some research, you need to draft notes down, you need to ultimately draft a working version of the book you're writing. It needs to be proofreading and copy edited. It needs to be run by whoever is ultimately going to be signing off on it, the manuscript, and then ultimately you're publishing a book, and there's a whole set of steps that will go around publishing. Think about all the steps that go into anything you do any day. That's your work breakdown structure. So as you start to really gel up around what your project is, take the time with your teams at your team meetings to break out the specific elements. All of this, once you understand the key elements, can be assigned to different people or teams of people and ultimately worked into tasks on your working timeline and say, we should have this by this date, we should have this by this date, this person is responsible. And that becomes a really nice tool for the team to coalesce around. And so we're going to ask, to spend a couple minutes thinking about that today. Talked about change orders and change management, and then there's tons of project management systems and tools out there. Basecamp is the one you have for this project. Use it. It's going to be one of the most helpful things to have all of your documentation, artifacts, working models, timeline, everything in a place where everyone can work as see it. Even rough notes as people are working are going to be helpful to have in a central place. All right, here comes the minor fun part. I promised a small amount of fun. So here's all my old, when projects go bad and fail. Chuck Norris, classically, failure is not an option. For those folks who are as old as I am and like Star Wars still, we'll get the "those were the droids you were looking for" joke. This is the often misquoted, and this isn't the right quote from Edison, but everyone uses it. He's not failed, just found 10,000 ways that it won't work for the light bulb. That was just testing. It turns out failure is an option, and I've had projects fail plenty. There's multitudes of reasons for that. Primarily, what I've seen is poor planning. If you walk in without a good plan, if you're not communicating what that plan is, if people don't know what they're doing, projects are likely to fail. You could have lack of or change of stakeholder or sponsor support. I've had very high cost projects professionally fail because there were changes in leadership and new leaders came in and did not support the project any longer and almost forced it to fail. That's really unfortunate, but it is a thing that happens. Change in organizational leadership. Sometimes budgets aren't planned properly and a budget could shrink. No overage planned for, no buffer for overages. A project turns out to be bigger than expected or planned for. You uncover more as you start to work on the actual build, and there's no contingency, and someone says, you know what, we're not going to invest, this is sunk cost, let's walk away from it at this point. We can't do all the things that we've now uncovered. That's a real thing, and it's not your fault specifically, but it does happen. This is a big one. Technology can change or become obsolete. Sometimes there's unique software packages out there, there's unique solutions that you're like, oh, this is the thing, and this is going to make our lives better. But that company could go out of business 6 months from now. So there's a hazard around vetting, kind of your vendors, whether it's software, whether it's actual hardware. Company develops an amazing physical product that you need every day in your work, and then they go out of business a few months later and there's no support and they're not taking returns, and then you have to respend money that you didn't plan on spending. So there's a lot of ways that projects can fail. Does anyone, and we don't have time for a full round robin, but anything anyone has ever experienced in the room here they'd like to share around just a terrible project failure? You're just like, why didn't we see this, or this happened and we wish we could have done better. Anything anyone would like to share? Nothing specific. That's okay. We'll keep on track for time here. So I'm going to defer a little bit of this because Amy's going to talk about kind of LPV projects here in just a second. You'll get a copy of this slide deck so we can come back to it, but there's a lot of different things and you should scale appropriately. Considering the constraints you might have on the project in terms of the iron triangle, developing ideas with the stakeholders, determining resources, like here is a very basic, if we wanted to call it this in the most simplest term possible, what's on screen is almost a project management plan, minus tons of context and deeper dive around what you're actually doing here. But use something, agree with your team on some process that you're going to follow and carry throughout the life cycle of the work that you're about to undertake. And just going along with that, my company uses something very similar to what the traditional waterfall methodology that PMI supports is plan, design, build, deploy, and support. This type of model could carry through in any number of different applications, but it is a very good kind of simple, easy to understand and basic model and proven to work very effectively. All right, so I cut this one down. We'll do a 10-minute break here, and then we're gonna come back and do that hands-on exercise for timeline, and then we're gonna quickly move into the remainder of the day here with Amy, but we've got a little bit more to go. So thanks everyone, go stretch your legs, have a coffee. We'll see everyone back at 11:17.
Okay. So I'll keep this part short. Basically what I'll do is I'll apply some of the learnings that Dan had just talked about to the LPV project. So I was an LPV in 2018. For our project, we eventually decided to work with Treehouse Foundation. So Dan, you could go to the next slide, please. Treehouse is located in East Hampton, Massachusetts. It's a nonprofit organization that creates a neighborhood for adoptive families and their children, and then also elders. The idea is that it takes a village to raise children. And so this neighborhood is designed where young children have the support of an entire village, so not just their parents, but also the elderly that lives there. And then also the children, provides like a sense of youth for the elderly. So it's like a win-win. It's a nice small, I lived in Northampton for about 2 years and I've never heard of Treehouse. And so it was really nice to have this opportunity to look for nonprofits throughout PV. And then eventually help Treehouse Foundation. And so, I said we eventually decided to work with Treehouse because I'm not sure if you guys have been far along with your groups yet, but part of deciding what non-for-profit we wanted to work with included having like very long nights, disagreements, and talks with our team members because a lot of people were passionate about different missions. And so if you do see that arise within your groups, it's completely normal. You're not alone, and that's definitely part of the process. And I know Dan and Laura could probably attest to some of the hardships that our team went through. So then we could probably move to the next slide. So roles and responsibilities for every project that I've worked on, whether it was with LPV, Mass Mutual, or even CVS, there's roles and responsibilities. These are just a few that I've listed out here. I think it's just more important to note that as the PM, you have to make clear at the very start of the project what those roles and responsibilities are. The reason for this is because it creates boundaries throughout the project. And you don't really want to be reactive with it. You want to set those boundaries at the start. And so someone, and that isn't to say that someone can't do something outside of their role. It's just helps create a sense of structure within the project when you define that person's responsibility. It also helps with, disagreements later down the road, things like that. And so for our project, we had a business sponsor. So that was the representative at Treehouse who we worked with. she helped us identify the mission of the project, you know, like what we're trying to achieve and why we're trying to do this. We had a project managers. So my team had many project managers, even if it wasn't their job title, but, you know, they still called themselves a PM, which is fine. It just kind of made the process just a little bit more difficult. But basically, usually within the projects I've managed at Mass Mutual or CVS, there's typically only one PM. Sometimes you'll see two. I've seen companies break it out where there's like a business PM and then an IT PM. It depends on the project you're on. But for LPV, ideally, if there's one, that would probably make things go a lot smoother. Ours had, I think, like 3. So it really depends. The project team, so I think Dan had alluded to this earlier. Those are the people who are doing the tasks, who are executing, subject matter experts, and then impacted areas. Those are just a few of the roles and roles, but broken out. There could certainly be more than what you're seeing here. And Dan and Laura, feel free to add anything if you'd like.
I think you covered the thing I was going to note on is, in a perfect world, with the LPV project team, you do have someone who wants, and everyone agrees, can be in the role of project manager. But technically, it is not a role that is over anyone, and making sure everyone understands that you're a team. And someone, though, just kind of helping, who enjoys the logistical part of tracking and keeping things moving, keeping the project timeline and requirements in check, checking in and making sure that everyone's clear on the accountabilities. That's an important role, but can be shared in this context of LTV. But ideally, yeah, if one person assumes that and everyone's like, yes, you can do it, that would be make it neater and cleaner.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so the next slide highlights a waterfall approach. So there's 2 approaches to projects. Usually there's agile and then there's waterfall. Waterfall is kind of what you see here and what we've been talking about. It's, you know, broken out into phases. You don't really go to the next phase before you finish the prior one. So it's a very staggered approach. And this is just kind of repetitive. I think Dan had highlighted all of these phases earlier. There's actually 2 missing from this slide. There's the monitoring and closing. But basically, you know, there's initiation. So when you first initiate a project, you're defining what that project is, why you're doing it, who the resources are, and what the objectives and impacts are. These are a few of the artifacts that you can use. You can even Google. There's a lot of templates out there, and it just really helps you organize the project. Planning. Again, you need sign off on the charter. You'll see, oops, oh, sorry, I was just scrolling through the slides on my end, but sign off of the charter, that's important, because what you want to do is make sure everybody on the team is in agreement, but then also that the business stakeholders are in agreement too. And I think this is something that Dan was talking about earlier regarding like what makes a project fail. The one thing that makes projects fail for me is scope creep. I'm the type of person that like has a hard time saying no sometimes. And so when a business stakeholder says, oh, we want to add this, or we want to do this in addition to what we've agreed on, I'm always like, okay, that sounds great. But, you know, setting a project charter, sticking to the charter, that helps people who have trouble saying no, say no. Because what we can do is reflect back to this charter and say, you know, this is what we signed off on, this is what the team agreed to, this is what we have the budget and capacity for. If we change that now, it's going to change the entire timeline, or, you know, it's going to have major impacts of the project. And might create risks of us delivering. Requirements, timeline, marketing, communications, these are all templates that you can find on Google. I think, again, it just helps with organizing the project before you start to execute on the work. I think with every successful project, you have to spend a good amount of time, you know, planning and preparing. Let me see if there's anything. So providing a warranty period. I don't think this was touched on earlier. Usually after projects, and even the one for LPV, what we did was we helped them with a marketing strategy. And even beyond LPV, we gave them, I think it was like 60 days or something. If they had questions or if they needed advice or guidance, we would be there and we would be available to them. So many projects have warranty periods where we make ourselves available to answer any questions they might have. And I think you could move on to the next slide. Okay, so I thought it would be helpful to show you snippets of our project charter. I don't think, so Laura, have people haven't begun their project charters yet, right?
No, they've done team charters, but not project charters. And we don't.
It's not required.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so we ended up creating a project charter, and it might have just been because our team was, a little bit all over the place with what we wanted to do. So this helped us define the project and the purpose and things like that. And so
because you were stuck with me as your coach, Amy.
Yeah, that's right. Dan was our coach too. And so he's, as you know, a director of PM. So we had to do, I think, more artifacts than other teams had to. But so the project charter has the name, the members, the program, and the partner. And I think that this was actually a project charter that I used from Mass Mutual. So besides the logos and everything, a lot of this looks very similar to what we would use at Mass Mutual for a project there. So project purpose, outlining the vision and the mission. And so the business stakeholders will help you define that vision. They'll come to you and they'll let you know, what we can help with. And then the mission is how we get there. And so for us, we were asked to help with a long-term marketing strategy. And, again, it was because there was this neighborhood, this gem in East Hampton, but nobody knew about it. And so they wanted to get the word out there. And so our team was called the River Rafters, and we helped with this marketing strategy by, expanding their online presence through social media, and then also optimizing their SEO. We tried to target Pioneer Valley local audiences through donations, involvement, and then an event. And so that was our vision and that was our mission. You could go to the next slide, please, Stan. We broke out project objectives. And one reason why we did this was because we had so many ideas about how we wanted to accomplish this. And so realistically, I think we only had like a couple of months or so. And so we had to regroup and talk about what we could realistically do on top of our full-time jobs or, family commitments, things like that. And so we decided that we would outline objectives and then how we measure the success of each objective. And so, with Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, those are all social platforms that we wanted to expand their presence on. And so we tried to do something realistic by saying increasing followers by 5%. I think at the time we only had like a couple hundred followers. So this was something that we realistically could do. And I think it was even like if we followed them, it would have, it helped us get to the 5%, not fully, but we took those into account, things that were realistic. SEO, this was something that, we were very careful on the wording for, because we didn't want to guarantee securing a Google grant, but we wanted to provide insight as to how they could secure it. So again, we had someone on our team who was an SEO manager, and he was very big on teaching people how to do things rather than just doing it for them, so that even though we're gone, they still know what they need to do to secure grants in the future. They didn't have a LinkedIn at the time, and so we said we would get Judy, who is the founder of Treehouse, connected on LinkedIn, and then helping her, teach her how to post. Some of these things that might come very naturally to us, she didn't know how to do. So that was another objective. Their website was a little bit bland. And so we wanted to do content edits. We wanted to get them into like e-newsletters, things like that. So everything you see here is everything we did for the project, with exception to the event. And so our, the three of us, so we had 3 PMs, the 3 of us really tried to keep the team on track and within scope. So this is what we agreed to, and this is what we delivered on. You could go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so project scope and out of scope. So this is a perfect example because our team clearly held an event which we said was out of scope. But again, no project runs perfectly. In scope, this is what we had outlined as to what we were going to do. The marketing strategy, getting them connected to LinkedIn. It was a 4-month project. I won't go through every single one of these bullets. Out of scope, we said we would not be planning or running events, and then we would not be writing grants or, soliciting for funding. For bullet number 1, we ended up running an event. This was something that someone on our team was really passionate about doing. So she ended up owning that bullet and creating and running that event. It turned out to be a very successful event. But what ended up happening was, because it was out of scope, whoever had the capacity to and wanted to do so within our LPV team did it. Other people were not obligated to participate or to help plan just because it was out of scope. I would suggest creating an in-scope and out-of-scope list for your projects. And again, if you can get all team members and stakeholders to agree on it, that's probably going to save you headaches in the future. So overall approach, this is very generic. It's just how we plan to achieve all of the objectives we set out to do. So based on our skills and experiences, we will research and create a marketing strategy for Treehouse's social media and website online engagement. We were going to provide best practices, strategy, and structure to their marketing campaigns. And again, this is just the approach as to how we would achieve the objectives we set out. You can go to the next slide. Thanks, Dan. Project timeline, this is nothing fancy. I know with more complicated projects, different tools would probably help break out the timeline a little bit better. But for LPV, it's a pretty straightforward project. There's, and a lot of time we have, there's a clear key business stakeholder. So this was something we just used. I think it was just a Word document, but really breaking out high-level milestones. So proposal, updates, a draft of the project, because the marketing strategy is something like very tangible that we could create. It was easy for us to plan for and include in the timeline. So what we did was we had the marketing strategy, we had several iterations of that document, and we were able to present that final project or document to Treehouse May 22nd with feedback incorporated with them. Throughout these, we've had many touch points with Treehouse. It wasn't just like these items where we met. We met throughout this entire timeline, kept them updated with what we were doing, and was very transparent. And I'll get to that. One way we could be transparent with our business stakeholders was through Basecamp. I think Basecamp is actually a really good tool for the LPV project. And I can explain a little bit more as to why I think that in a future slide. You could go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just the project team breaking out, roles and responsibilities. We kept it kind of vague. If you want to be more specific, I'd highly suggest that. And then acceptance of the project scope and the charter. So having the sponsor sign off and dating that's good for documentation purposes. Okay, so Basecamp. Basecamp is the tool people are using for this project, right? Okay. So Basecamp is a fine tool. Basically, there's ways to do automatic check-ins. Right now at CVS, we call these daily stand-ups. So it's actually nicer, I think, on Basecamp because you could do it virtually. We actually have to meet 15 minutes every morning to go through pretty much what you see on screen here. But it's nice to check to see, like, you know, especially since everyone's virtual and everyone probably has their own commitments and jobs, to just check in with one another. So if somebody has a task that they're supposed to do, they can mention if they're blocked on anything or if maybe they need help with something. I know several times within my team, I think someone, you know, had fallen ill and needed some coverage. You know, we used Basecamp to kind of communicate that, and then whoever saw it and had capacity could just pick up their work and help them out. And so automatic check-ins are really good. If you set those up, you don't have to do any work, it just pops up. And you could, you know, schedule these Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just to make sure the team is staying connected too. I think that's a good idea. The to-do list, again, this was really useful for our team. You can create to-do lists within Basecamp and basically assign people to work on them, assign deadlines, and then also add descriptions as to what that task is. And I'd say for a project, for at least our project, again, it was really straightforward. We knew the tasks, you know, before we even started the project. So I think what we did was just really outlined every single one of the tasks, divvied up the work, who was doing what and when it was due. And then during check-ins or during, you know, team meetings, we would literally just go through the list of to-dos and check stuff off as we go, all the way up until completion. And I'd say the good thing about Basecamp is you can tag people. So if it's your to-do item and you have no idea what it's about, or you forgot, maybe it was like scheduled months ago and you just need a refresher, tag somebody on there and just be like, hey, what's this? So Basecamp has that functionality where you can tag, you can schedule to-dos with deadlines and assign it to people. If you use all of these fields, I think it's a really useful tool, and it would keep the project on track. And another thing is, holistically, you can see, you know, like everything that's been completed, everything that's left to complete. It just helps keep the project very organized. And honestly, Basecamp can be used for other things too, you know, like if you have something to do, like plan a party, you know, or something. I'm pretty sure Basecamp is free. You can just keep your checklist running there and assign it to, you know, whoever family, you know, I just think it's a great tool overall. And so Dan, I don't know if you had any comments to add about Basecamp. I know you like this tool too.
Yeah, I've used multiple. Basecamp is as good as any of the other things out there, and you've got it already, and everything that you're doing, Laura's keeping in there. So yeah, definitely use it.
Yeah. And then the message board. So for our team, we wanted to keep everything within Basecamp. So we didn't want emails or, you know, obviously there were emails here and there, but if you could, we wanted to have everything housed in Basecamp. So any documents, any messages, any to-do lists, everything within Basecamp. And so message board allows you to, again, tag the person, ask the question. And I think that everyone has like the ability to view all of the messages. So it also allowed for transparency too. And so I don't know about you guys, but I was much quicker to respond on Basecamp than I was through emails, just because I kept getting so many emails. And with Basecamp, it's just a clearer, I think, more visually easier to use. And so we did messages through Basecamp as well. And that was pretty effective for our team. Okay, so project plans. Again, there's many tools out there. It depends on the complexity of your project. For LPV, I think we just used an Excel document, which we also housed in Basecamp. The document just had items, I think it was like six columns. It was like, oh, here it is. It's actually, you can see it right here. So like task, assigned to, so assigned to who. And again, Basecamp can replace this altogether with a to-do list. It just depends on your preference, what you like to do. Oh my goodness, yes, it's already time. Are we good? I mean, that's pretty much all I had to say anyway. I can send out information if people want. Dan, I'll hand it back to you. I know we're at time.
Laura, I'm going to hand it over to you immediately. So we're going to, you'll get a copy PDF of this presentation. Laura's got a couple of example handouts, risk register, basic, a couple of basic artifacts that you might find useful. There's tons of free templates online out there for everything you'll ever need. Basecamp is your primary tool and it has templates as well. Use the tools that are available. Don't reinvent the wheel anywhere is my kind of parting word on that. I'm going to post my email here. Please reach out. Unfortunately, I am a nerd. I enjoy talking project management. So if you email me, I'm going to respond to you. And if you want to talk about not only your LPV project or even just kind of guidance, if you're looking to get formal certification, always happy to give advice and guidance wherever possible. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Great.
Laura.
Yeah, thank you to Dan and Amy. Really appreciate your fire hose of information. We will have all of the, Dan sent me some handouts, which are examples of some of the things that he used with his team. So I'll put that up on Basecamp and you can use those templates. And as I mentioned, there's a ton of resources out there. So find what works for you. I mean, I think that when I'm looking at things, I've tried Trello before. I didn't like Trello. So if it doesn't work for you, don't use it. Find what works for you. And the other thing that was mentioned just about teams having project managers, it's up to your teams to decide if you want to assign somebody as your project manager, or if you don't. It's fine to go either way. And your team mentors are happy to work with you on what the process might be if you wanted to assign somebody with that role. There's lots of different ways to figure out how to assign somebody. I think one of the lessons in doing this program is you have all people who are at the same level, and how do you manage a team when there isn't somebody who's a designated boss? And more and more teams in the world are working that way, where it's cross teams from different departments, and learning how to do this among new friends when it's lower stakes is part of the name of the game. So happy to work with you guys to figure that out. But that's all I have. I know that Irene mentioned they use monday.com. So there's lots of resources out there. And we'll be back together December 17th, you all. So I sent out a message yesterday. We're going to start the morning at UMass. So everybody have a great 2 weeks, and we'll see you soon. Any questions?
Thank
Anything
you.
you need?
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right. Happy Friday.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.